I don't control it.
Then why is it reaching for me?
A forbidden light crossed an entire planet and bent toward the only being who shouldn't attract anything at all. A human. No one knows why her alien glow chose him, or what it awakened when it did. Where are you watching from? And hey, subscribe to help this channel grow. The story begins now. Elian Ward had perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight. The central archive of Nareen 5 stretched 3 stories high, filled with physical books that almost nobody read anymore. Most people preferred neural feeds or holographic displays. But Elian liked the weight of paper, the smell of aging ink, the way dust motes danced in the dim overhead lights. He liked the silence. He especially liked being alone. It was Tuesday evening when she walked in. Elian noticed her immediately. Not because she was tall, or because her hooded cloak seemed out of place, but because the metal shelving caught something strange in its reflection. A shimmer. A glow. The woman moved between the history section like she was trying not to exist. Her posture was tense, shoulders hunched forward, steps careful and measured. Elian watched from his desk as she reached for a book, then pulled her hand back as if the spine had burned her. That was when he saw it clearly. Light. Actual light, seeping through the fabric of her sleeves. Not harsh or bright, but soft and somehow sad. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat made visible. She must have sensed him watching because she froze. The light intensified for just a moment. Then she yanked her hood lower and turned toward the exit. But the light had other ideas. A thin filament of luminescence escaped from beneath her cloak, drifting across the aisle like it had a mind of its own. It stretched toward Elian, reaching, seeking. When it touched the edge of his desk, it settled there, pulsing in rhythm with something he couldn't name. The woman went rigid. She stared at the light thread connecting them as if it had betrayed her. Elian did what he always did when confronted with the inexplicable. He asked a simple question. "Why does your light follow me?" Her head snapped up. Even in the shadow of her hood, he could see her eyes widen, golden, reflective, alien. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered in a voice that sounded like she was confessing a crime. "I do not control it." But Elian noticed something curious. The light wasn't chaotic or wild. It wasn't spilling everywhere or causing damage. It was responding, specifically, intentionally, to him. She must have realized he understood this because she took a step back, the thread of light stretching thin between them before finally breaking. Without another word, she turned and fled into the night, leaving Elian sitting in the sudden darkness of the archive. He looked down at the spot where her light had touched his desk. There was no mark, no heat, no evidence it had been there at all, except for the strange warmth spreading through his chest. A warmth he hadn't felt in years, not since his sister died. Elian closed the archive early that night. He went home to his small apartment above the old transit station and stared at the ceiling, trying to convince himself that tomorrow would be normal, that the glowing woman would not return. He was wrong on both counts, because something had shifted in the quiet library. Something had recognized something else. And in a galaxy where light meant power and power meant danger, being seen was the most terrifying thing of all, especially when the person seeing you was the one you had been unconsciously searching for your entire life. But Elian Ward did not know this yet. He only knew that for the first time in 5 years, he fell asleep without dreaming of the accident. He dreamed of light instead. She came back 3 days in a row. Same time, same entrance, same attempt to disappear into the shadows between the shelves. But Elian noticed patterns the way other people noticed weather. It was his job to catalog, to organize, to see what others missed. And he was missing nothing about her. On the first return, she stayed for 17 minutes. She never touched a single book, just stood in the philosophy section, hood up, shoulders tight, as if waiting for something to attack her. Elian pretended to work on inventory, but his eyes kept drifting to the soft glow that leaked from beneath her cloak every few seconds. On the second return, she stayed for 34 minutes. This time, she moved to the old history wing, where Elian kept the physical archives that nobody had digitized yet. He was reshelving reference materials when he noticed something impossible. The books were glowing. Not her. The books themselves. Wherever she walked, ancient spines that had sat dark and forgotten for decades began to emit faint traces of light. It lasted only seconds after she passed, like the ghost of her presence lingering in the paper and binding. Elian quickly moved the affected volumes to a lower shelf, blocking them from view of the security cameras. He didn't know why he was protecting her. He only knew that something about her light felt less like a threat and more like a question nobody had bothered to ask. On the third return, she finally spoke to him. It happened during one of his episodes. Elian called them micro-blackouts, though his therapist had used fancier terms. Brief moments where the grief hit so hard that he forgot where he was, who he was, anything except the memory of his sister's hand slipping from his during the forest collapse. He was standing in the middle of the archive floor, staring at nothing, when her voice cut through the fog. "You carry something heavy." Elian blinked. The hooded woman stood 3 meters away, closer than she had ever been. Her light was pulsing faster now, matching something he couldn't identify. His own heartbeat, maybe, or his breathing, or the specific rhythm of his panic. "I'm fine," he said automatically. "Your lie makes my light turn gray," she said softly, pulling her cloak tighter. "I did not mean to intrude. My light, it senses things. Wounds. Pain. It follows without permission." Elian looked at her properly for the first time. Even in the dim archive lighting, he could see the elegant lines of her face, the slight translucence of her skin, the way golden eyes held both exhaustion and something deeper. Shame, maybe. Or resignation. "What are you?" he asked, not unkindly. "Luminar," she said. "We are called Luminar. We feel too much, so we glow. It is both gift and curse." "And the books?" She looked at the shelves, confused. Elian pointed to the section she had just passed. 2 old volumes were emitting a faint shimmer, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. Her eyes widened. "I did not know I could do that," she whispered. Then, quieter, "Perhaps it is because these books hold sadness, old stories, forgotten things." Before Elian could respond, the archive's entrance chimed. His assistant manager, Kyle, walked in with his usual enthusiasm, chattering about updated catalog systems. The woman pulled her hood low and vanished between the stacks so quickly Elian almost wondered if he had imagined her. But Kyle stopped mid-sentence, squinting at the air. "Did someone leave a light panel on? I swear I saw something glowing." "Old wiring," Elian said smoothly. "I'll check the maintenance logs." Kale shrugged and launched into his report about requisitions, but Elian wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about light that followed pain, books that glowed with old sadness, and the way her voice had sounded when she said the word intrude, like she had spent her entire life apologizing for existing. That evening, after Kale left, Elian found a small note tucked between 2 philosophy texts. The handwriting was precise, almost too perfect. "Thank you for hiding the books. I will try not to return. I bring only trouble." Elian stared at the note for a long time. Then he pulled out a pen and wrote a single line beneath her words. "The archive is open every evening until 22 or 0. Trouble is welcome." He left the note where he found it. The next morning, the archive administrator, a stern Valorian named Therex, appeared at Elian's desk with a datapad and a frown. "We have detected unusual luminous emissions from this facility over the past 72 hours. Unregistered bioluminescence. I need you to file an incident report." Elian's blood went cold, but his face remained calm. Years of being invisible had taught him how to lie without lying. "Probably the forest moths," he said. "They've been migrating through the plaza, very attracted to old paper." Therex looked unconvinced but nodded. Monitor it. The city council is cracking down on uncontrolled emissions, new regulations. As Therex left, Elian looked at the philosophy section where the glowing woman had stood. He had just lied to a city official for a person whose name he did not even know. And somehow, it felt like the most honest thing he had done in years. The new ordinance appeared on every public display across Nareen 5 within 48 hours. Municipal Code 7743. Any individual producing unregistered bioluminescent emissions, deemed emotionally destabilizing or uncontrolled, must register with the Planetary Immigration Bureau within 10 standard days, or face immediate deportation. Elian read it 3 times, his stomach sinking with each pass. The law did not say her name, but it might as well have. She appeared that evening before he even opened the archive doors. She was standing in the shadow of the building, hood up, but her light was barely contained. It flickered desperately beneath her cloak like a trapped animal. "I heard about the law," Elian said quietly, unlocking the entrance. "Come inside." "I cannot stay. I tried to find work as a night guide in the bioluminescent forests. I thought perhaps I could blend in with the native fauna." "Did it work?" Her silence was answer enough. Then she added, voice tight, "The predators came, moth stalkers, sky eels. They are drawn to emotional light, not natural light. I nearly led an entire tourist group into a feeding swarm." Elian felt his chest tighten. "You need somewhere to hide. I do not hide well." She gestured at herself, and even that small movement sent cascades of light rippling down her arms. "I was exiled because I feel too much. My people, they trained us to be beacons, controlled, beautiful, useful. But I could never stop my light from showing what I truly felt. So they sent me away." It was the most she had ever said at once. Elian heard the weight of years in those words, the exhaustion of running, the shame of being too much and never enough simultaneously. He made a decision that probably violated at least 6 archive regulations. "There is a basement level," he said. "Old storage. The Index 451 project. Nobody goes down there except me. You could stay if you need to." She stared at him. "Why would you risk this?" Elian thought about his sister, about the moment he had let go of her hand, because he had been too scared, too slow, too human. About 5 years of living in a library because books couldn't die and leave you. "Because," he said carefully, "I know what it is like to feel like your existence is a burden." Her light pulsed once, bright and almost painful, then settled into something softer, sadder. "I will accept," she whispered, "but only for a short time. I am searching for something in the archives, a historical record. Once I find it, I will leave Nareen 5 forever." "What are you looking for?" She hesitated, then reached into her cloak and pulled out a small data chip. "There was a luminar who disappeared from this planet 2 decades ago. The galactic records say she died, but my family believes she may have simply gone dark, stopped glowing, became invisible." Elian took the chip, his cataloger's mind already racing through the archive structure. "I can help you search." "Why?" "Because you asked. And because nobody asks me for anything except where to find books they will not read." That evening, he showed her the basement. It smelled like old metal and older paper, lit only by emergency lighting panels that cast everything in deep amber. But it was warm, and it was hidden, and most importantly, it was off every security grid. Elian brought down blankets, a portable heating unit, water. She watched him work with an expression he couldn't quite read. When he turned to leave, she stopped him with a single word. "Wait." He paused on the stairs. "Would you—" she began, then stopped. Started again. "Would you read something? Out loud? From one of the books?" "Which book?" "Any book about quiet things, small things, things that do not have to shine to matter." So Elian sat on the bottom step and read poetry from a collection published 200 years ago by a human woman from Earth. Poems about rain and gardens and the specific weight of silence. As he read, the woman's light began to change. The frantic pulsing slowed. The harsh edges softened. By the third poem, her glow had stabilized into something that looked almost peaceful. When he finished, she had tears on her cheeks. They glowed faintly like captured starlight. "Thank you," she whispered. "That is the first time in 9 years my light has felt calm." Elian closed the book. "What is your name?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then, as if offering something sacred, "Ura." "I'm Elian." "I know. I heard your assistant say it." They shared a small smile. Then Elian climbed the stairs, locked the basement behind him, and went home, wondering what he had just started. The next morning, as he opened the archive, he saw them. Tourists. At least a dozen. They wore casual clothing, but their movements were too coordinated, their attention too focused. And on their sleeves, barely visible, a symbol, a stylized sun with rays that curved inward. The sign of a luminar clan. Elian's hands began to shake as he unlocked the door. The hunters had arrived, and Ura, sleeping in the basement, glowed even in her dreams. They fell into a rhythm over the next week, though calling it comfortable would have been a lie. Ura slept in the basement during the day when tourist traffic was highest. Elian brought her food, always apologizing that it was just synthesized protein or flavor packets dissolved in water. She never complained. She ate slowly, methodically, as if she had forgotten what it meant to be cared for. At night, when the archive emptied, she would emerge, and Elian discovered something extraordinary. Her light responded to the books. Not just any books, specific ones, old ones, the kind filled with handwritten marginalia and water stains and the particular sadness of being forgotten. When Ura walked past them, they would glow briefly, as if recognizing a kindred spirit. But stranger still, Elian noticed her light changed when he read to her. The first time was an accident. He had been cataloging late-night inventory, reading titles out loud to himself as he worked, a collection of human short stories about loss and memory. He heard her breath catch on the stairs. "Keep going," she had said softly. "Please." So he did. He read the entire story. And as he read about a woman scattering her husband's ashes in a river, Ura's light shifted. It deepened, turned from its usual pale gold to something richer, more amber. "Your light just changed color," Elian said, looking up from the book. Ura touched her arm, studying the glow. "I have never seen it do that before. Read something happier." He found a comedy. Read 3 pages. Her light turned silver-white, almost crystalline. "It is responding to the emotion in the words," she breathed. "Or perhaps to how you feel when you read them." "I don't feel anything when I read," Elian said automatically. Her light turned gray. "That," she said gently, "is also a feeling." Over the following nights, they experimented. Tragedy made her glow deep amber. Comedy brought out silver. Poetry written in minor keys produced something like pale blue. And once, when Elian was exhausted and read something without thinking about the words at all, her light simply went out entirely. "Do not do that again," she had said, shaken. "When you read without feeling, it is like listening to silence scream." So Elian learned to feel while reading, or at least to let himself acknowledge that he felt anything at all. The tourists came to the archive on the 5th day, 3 of them. They asked polite questions about historical records, planetary surveys, immigration documents from 20 years ago. Elian answered each question carefully, watching their eyes track the shadows between shelves. They were hunting. That night, Elian did something desperate. He took the archive's old holographic mapping system, designed for patrons to navigate the stacks, and reprogrammed it. Now it projected false light signatures randomly throughout the building. If someone was scanning for bioluminescence, they would get dozens of false positives. "It will confuse their sensors," Elian explained to Ura, "at least for a while." She looked at him with something like awe. "You are quite clever for someone who insists he is not important." I'm a librarian. We specialize in making things harder to find. Is that what you are doing with me? Making me harder to find? Elian met her eyes. I'm trying to make sure you can be found by the right people. On your terms, when you are ready. Yura's light pulsed, and for a moment Elian thought she might cry again. Instead she asked, "Why do you help me? Truly?" He could have lied. Should have, maybe. But sitting in the dim basement, surrounded by forgotten books and borrowed time, Elian found himself telling the truth. I had a sister, Vera. She was a forest surveyor. 3 years ago there was a collapse in the deep canopy zones. Structural failure. I was with her when it happened. She was hanging from a root system, and I was trying to pull her up, but I froze. Just for a second. Got scared of falling myself. And my hand slipped. The words came faster now, like a wound finally draining. She fell 80 meters. They said she died instantly, but I know she had time to realize I let go, that I chose myself over her, and I have been trying to be invisible ever since because visibility means being seen as the person who killed his sister through cowardice. Silence filled the basement. Then Yura's light shifted. It did not get brighter or dimmer. It simply moved. Slowly, deliberately, her glow extended outward like reaching hands. It touched the walls, the books, the floor. And then it touched Elian, not burning, not invading, just present. Your pain, Yura said quietly, is the same frequency as mine. That is why my light follows you. Not because you need saving, but because we recognize each other. Elian felt something break open in his chest, something that had been locked tight for 3 years. Yura stood and moved to sit beside him on the floor. Her light settled around them both like a blanket. I was trained since childhood to shine for others, she said. To be beautiful, controlled, a symbol of my clan's power. But I could never turn off my feelings. When I saw injustice, I glowed with anger. When I witnessed suffering, I glowed with grief. They said I was broken, unstable, that I would ruin everything if they let me continue, so they exiled me, told me to never shine again. But you cannot stop, Elian said. No, I cannot. And I spent years hating myself for it. Until tonight, when you told me about your sister. She turned to face him fully. You did not let go because you were a coward. You let go because you were terrified and human and alone, and she would have understood. You did not know her. I know you, and I know what it means to carry guilt for simply being what you are. They sat together in the basement as the city hummed above them. Two people who had spent years convinced they were too broken to deserve connection. Yura's light pulsed once, soft and steady. And for the first time since the accident, Elian Ward felt like maybe he was not entirely invisible after all. Upstairs, another group of tourists entered the archive, their scanning equipment pinged with dozens of false signatures. They would be back tomorrow with better tools. Time was running out. For 48 hours, Yura did the impossible. She controlled her light completely. Elian watched in amazement as she moved through the archive without leaving a single glowing trace. No books lit up as she passed. No ambient shimmer followed her movements. She had locked down every emission, every involuntary pulse, becoming as close to invisible as a luminar could be. How are you doing this? He asked on the second night. Yura's voice was strained. Meditation technique, military grade. They taught it to clan warriors for stealth operations. I swore I would never use it. She paused. But I will not let my existence put you in danger. Maybe we should celebrate, Elian said, trying to inject lightness he did not quite feel. You have earned at least one night outside this basement. Yura looked at him with surprise. Then, slowly, she smiled. I would like that very much. They waited until well past midnight, when even the nocturnal street traffic had thinned. Then Elian led her out through the archive's maintenance exit and down toward the edge of the bioluminescent forest. Nareen 5's forests at night were something visitors paid fortunes to experience. The trees themselves were dark, but every living thing beneath the canopy glowed. Fungi, like scattered stars, insects that wrote light poetry in the air, small creatures that left luminous footprints across branches. Yura stood at the forest edge, transfixed. "I have not let myself be near beauty in so long," she whispered. "I was afraid I would ruin it somehow." "You are not capable of ruining anything," Elian said. She turned to look at him, her expression unreadable in the darkness. Then, carefully, she released just a fraction of her control. Her light bloomed outward, soft and golden, and the forest responded. Plants that had been glowing their own colors began to pulse in sync with her heartbeat. Small creatures emerged from hiding, drawn not with aggression, but with curiosity. A cluster of floating moths settled on her shoulders like living jewelry. "They are not afraid," Yura breathed. "Why are they not afraid?" "Because you are not trying to control them or use them," Elian said. "You are just existing, and that is enough." For 20 perfect minutes, they walked through the forest as light and shadow danced around them. Yura's glow harmonized with the native luminescence, creating patterns that looked almost like music made visible. At one point, she laughed, actually laughed. The sound was so unexpected that Elian stopped walking. "I forgot I could do that," she said, embarrassed. "Do it again," he urged. So she did, and her light turned the color of sunrise. But perfection on Nareen 5, like everywhere else, had an expiration date. They returned to find new public postings throughout the city. The council had declared a luminous curfew. All bioluminescent beings, native or immigrant, had to register their signature patterns with the municipal database within 72 hours. "They are tightening the net," Yura said, her brief joy evaporating. "I can feel the control slipping. Maintaining the suppression, it requires constant focus. I can manage perhaps 2 more days." "Then we have 2 days to find what you came here looking for," Elian said. "That historical record, the disappeared Luminar. If we can locate those files, maybe you can leave before they identify you." They worked through the night, scanning archive indexes, cross-referencing immigration logs, tracking paper trails that had gone cold decades ago. Elian brought every research skill he possessed to bear. Just before dawn, he found it. A single entry in a sub-basement manifest, physical files, Box 2847, label, Unresolved Disappearance, Nareen 5 Colonial Period. "Got it," Elian said, pulling the dusty container from a shelf that probably had not been touched in 20 years. Inside were photographs, handwritten notes, and a medical report. Yura's hands shook as she examined them. "This woman," she whispered, touching a faded image. "Lyrae. She was my mother." Elian felt his stomach drop. "Your mother?" "My clan told me she died in a diplomatic incident, but these files, they say she requested political asylum on Nareen 5, that she wanted to disappear, that she succeeded." Yura's light flickered desperately. "They lied to me for 20 years. Before Elian could respond, Yura gasped. Her light exploded outward, uncontrolled, flooding the entire sub-basement. "What's wrong?" "The control," she choked out. "I pushed too hard, suppressed too much. It is all releasing at once." Light poured from her in waves. It was not beautiful now. It was desperate, panicked. A dam breaking. Above them, every light sensor in the archive building began screaming alerts. "We need to get you back to the basement," Elian said, but Yura shook her head. "Too late. The surge will have triggered every scanner in 5 blocks. She looked at him with anguish. "I am sorry. I tried to protect you, and I have done the opposite." Kandaduzuru. Power fluctuated throughout the building. Lights flickered, systems crashed. Somewhere in the distance, Elian heard emergency services being activated. "This is bad," Yura whispered. "This is very bad." They managed to get back to the basement before the first responders arrived. Yura curled into herself, trying desperately to re-establish control, but her light kept spiking. Every emotion she had suppressed for 2 days was breaking free at once. Grief, rage, betrayal, hope, despair. Elian knelt beside her. "Listen to me. You did not fail. You gave yourself 2 days of peace. That is not nothing. I endangered you. I endangered everyone. You are not dangerous. You are in pain. There is a difference." But even as he spoke, Elian's datapad chimed with an emergency alert. The power surge had been traced. City officials were en route to investigate, and according to the alert's secondary notation, they were bringing specialists. Luminar specialists. Yura read the message over his shoulder. Her light dimmed to almost nothing. "They have found me," she said. "After 9 years of running, they have finally found me. We can still hide. We can—" "No." Her voice was quiet but firm. "If I hide now, they will tear this city apart looking for me. Innocent people will be questioned, detained. You will be implicated." Elian realized what she was saying. "Yura, no. I will turn myself in at sunrise. I will tell them I acted alone, that you knew nothing." She looked at him with eyes that held galaxies of sadness. "Thank you, Elian Ward, for giving me 2 days of believing I could be normal. You are not turning yourself in." "I must." "No," Elian said, his mind racing through possibilities. "We have 6 hours until sunrise, 6 hours to find another option." "There is no other option." "There is always another option. That is the first rule of being a librarian. When you cannot find the answer you want, you find a different question to ask." Yura's light pulsed weakly. "And what question should we ask?" Elian looked at the historical files scattered around them, at the image of Yura's mother, who had somehow managed to disappear on a planet where everyone was always watching. "We ask," he said slowly, "how do you hide someone who glows in the dark?" Above them, on the city's secure communication channels, a message was sent to 3 ships in orbit. Target signature confirmed. Yura of Clan Solael, hereditary heir to the symbiotic order. Prepare extraction team. They had until sunrise, and sunrise on Narine 5 came very, very quickly. Elian spent 3 hours going through every file in box 2847, while Yura sat motionless, her light barely a whisper. What he found rewrote everything he thought he understood. "Yura," he said carefully, "I need you to read this." The document was a testimony, handwritten, dated 23 years ago, signed by Librarian of Clan Solael. Yura read it aloud, her voice breaking on almost every line. "I hereby request permanent asylum on Narine 5 under the Sentient Protection Act. I am the sole surviving heir to the symbiotic light order, a hereditary line of luminars whose bioluminescence is not merely reactive but sentient. Our light does not simply glow, it seeks, it feels, it connects to emotional frequencies across species barriers. For 3 generations, my clan has been weaponized. Our light was used to detect lies in prisoners, to manipulate crowds during political rallies, to track refugees trying to escape persecution by following their fear signatures. I was trained from childhood to believe this was noble work, necessary work. But I fell in love with a human diplomat, and when he died in what my clan called an unfortunate accident, my light showed me the truth. They had killed him, because our love proved that symbiotic light could choose empathy over control, could choose connection over power. I will not allow my unborn daughter to be trained as I was. I will not let her light be turned into a weapon. I am disappearing, going dark, even if it means I never shine again." The testimony ended there, but attached was a medical file. Genetic analysis, confirmation of pregnancy, estimated birth date. Yura stared at the dates, did the math, then looked at Elian with dawning horror. "I was born 4 months after this was filed," she whispered. "My clan told me my mother died giving birth to me, that her sacrifice was noble, that I was bred to carry on her legacy." "They lied," Elian said. "She did not die. She went dark. Successfully, and they could not let anyone know a symbiotic light user could choose to stop glowing. It would have destroyed their entire power structure. Ira's hand shook as she held the paper. So they raised me in her place, trained me, told me she had been a perfect soldier, a perfect symbol. Her light flared with sudden rage. Everything was a lie. Not everything, Elian said softly. Your light follows pain because that is what symbiotic light does. It does not follow weakness. It follows wounds that need acknowledgement. Your mother's light was not a weapon. Neither is yours. It is a mirror. It shows people what they are too afraid to see. And it showed you, Ira said, looking at him. That is why it would not leave you alone. Because you were carrying grief you had never allowed yourself to process. Elian nodded slowly. The truth of it settled in his chest like a weight and a relief all at once. But there is more, he said, finding another file. Your mother's testimony continues. She filed updates every 6 months for 2 years. Then nothing. The last entry says she successfully integrated into Nareen 5 society, became a forest botanist, studied bioluminescent ecosystems. Then where is she now? Elian showed her the final page. It was a death certificate. 8 years old. Cause: exposure during a research expedition into an unstable forest zone. The location matched exactly where Elian's sister had died. Ira saw him freeze. What is it? The accident that killed my sister, Elian said, voice hollow. There was another researcher with her. I never learned the name. They said she died trying to save Vera, that she held the structural root system together just long enough for Vera to almost make it to safety. He pulled up the incident report on his datapad, cross-referenced it with the death certificate. The names matched. Your mother, Elian said, barely able to speak. She died trying to save my sister. The basement fell into profound silence. 2 orphans of the same tragedy, meeting years later through light that followed unhealed wounds. That is why your pain called to me, Ira breathed. On some level, my light knew. It recognized the frequency of a wound connected to my own. Before either could process this revelation, Elian's datapad chimed again. A message from Administrator Tharex. Extraction team arrives at dawn. Hereditary heir Ura must be surrendered to Clan Soliel custody. Failure to comply will result in archive seizure and personal criminal charges for harboring a fugitive. But there was more. A second message. This one from someone identifying as Captain Varys of the Clan Soliel Diplomatic Corps. Heir Ira, your exile is hereby rescinded. Your clan requires your symbiotic light for critical negotiations. Return voluntarily, and no charges will be filed against you or your accomplices. You have our word. Ira read both messages. Her light dimmed to almost nothing. They do not want to punish me, she said. They want to use me. Someone important needs their lies detected, or their crowds controlled, and symbiotic light is too rare to waste. So do not go. If I refuse, you lose everything. Your job, your home, possibly your freedom. She looked at him. I cannot allow that. And I cannot allow you to walk back into the system that broke you. Then we are at an impasse. Elian stood and began pacing. His mind worked through the problem the way he would catalog a difficult collection. What were the variables? What was movable? What was fixed? They want you because you are useful, he said, because your light is a tool they can exploit. But what if we prove that symbiotic light cannot be controlled, that it chooses on its own terms? How would we prove that? Elian thought about the forest, about how the native luminescence had responded to her, about harmony instead of dominance. What if the answer is not hiding you, he said slowly. What if the answer is showing them what symbiotic light really is when it is not being weaponized? Ura stared at him. That would require me to shine, intentionally, publicly. Yes, they would see me immediately. That is the point. Elian, you are not making sense. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. Your mother spent her life learning to go dark because she believed that was the only way to be free. But maybe there is another way. Maybe freedom is not disappearing. Maybe it is shining so brightly on your own terms that no one can claim to own your light. Yura's eyes filled with glowing tears. You are asking me to do the one thing I have feared most. I am asking you to be exactly what you are, not what they trained you to be, not what they punished you for, just you. And if it fails, then we fail together, but at least we will fail as ourselves. Yura looked at their joined hands. Her light pulsed once, twice, then steadied into something that looked almost like resolve. All right, she whispered. Tell me your plan. As Elian explained what he had in mind, the sky above Nareen 5 began to lighten with approaching dawn. Somewhere in orbit, extraction teams prepared to land. And in a basement archive, two people who had spent years running from themselves decided to finally stand still. No matter what came next, dawn came too quickly and brought with it 3 ships that settled onto Nareen 5's landing platforms like predatory birds finding perches. Elian and Era spent the final hours before sunrise on the archive's roof. It had become their ritual over the past days. A place where they could see the bioluminescent forest stretching below and the dark sky above. Tell me again why we are not running, Era said quietly. Because you are tired of running, and because sometimes the bravest thing is standing still. She turned to look at him. Her light was unstable now, flickering between colors too quickly to name. Fear, determination, grief, hope, all of it tangled together. I have thought about what you said, Ayura began, about shining on my own terms, about showing them what symbiotic light really is. It is beautiful theory, Elian, but theory does not hold up well against extraction teams with legal authority. So we do not let them extract you. How? Elian had spent the night working out the details. It was a desperate plan, probably stupid, almost certainly going to fail, but it was the only path he could see that did not end with Yura disappearing into the machinery of her clan. You go to them voluntarily, he said. Before they come for you, you make a public statement. You demonstrate what symbiotic light does when it is allowed to exist freely, not as a weapon, and you show them that it cannot be controlled. They will not care about demonstrations. They will take me regardless. Maybe, but at least the galaxy will know the truth. At least your mother's story will not die in a forgotten archive. Yura was quiet for a long time. Then she said very softly, You have given me something I did not know I needed. You made me feel seen, not as a tool, not as a problem, just as a person. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that mattered. Elian felt something crack in his chest. Yura, let me finish. Her light steadied, turning a shade he had never seen before, something like determination dipped in sorrow. My light followed you because we were both carrying wounds tied to the same moment. Your sister, my mother, the same tragedy, the Saj. But I think it also followed you because you were the first person in 9 years who asked me a question instead of giving me orders. What question? Why does your light follow me? She smiled sadly. You asked like you genuinely wanted to understand. Not control, not use, just understand. I still want to understand. I know. And that is exactly why this is so hard. Elian's datapad buzzed. A message from Tharex. The extraction team had landed. They were en route to the archive. We are out of time, Yura said. Then we move now. We go to the central plaza. We make the statement public. No. Yura stood up, her light suddenly blazing. No, I will not let you be arrested for helping me. I will not let your career be destroyed. I will not let everything you have built here be torn apart because I was too broken to control myself. You are not broken. I am exactly broken enough to endanger everyone around me. My clan was right about one thing. I feel too much. I glow too brightly. I cause chaos wherever I go. That is fear talking. No, that is 9 years of evidence. Her voice cracked. I am turning myself in, Elian. Right now, before they come here, before they see us together, I will tell them I broke into the archive, that you caught me and tried to alert authorities, but I escaped. I will make sure you are protected. Ira, please. I have decided. She turned toward the roof access door. Elian grabbed her arm. Wait, just wait. 1 more minute. Please. She stopped, but did not turn around. Why? Because I need to tell you something about the accident, about Vera. Elian took a shaky breath. You said I let go because I was terrified and human and alone, but that is only half true. I let go because in that moment I chose my life over hers, and I have spent 3 years believing that makes me unforgivable. It makes you someone who wanted to survive, but your mother did not make that choice. She held that structural root. She held it even when she knew it would collapse. She gave Vera those extra 30 seconds, and Vera still fell, and your mother died anyway. 2 people dead because I was too afraid to hold on for 30 more seconds. Yura finally turned. Tears glowed on her cheeks. You are not responsible for their choices. Neither are you responsible for your light, but we both keep acting like we are. They stared at each other on that rooftop as the sky brightened and time ran out. I am still going, Yura whispered. I know. I am sorry. I know that too. She walked to him then, placed her hands on his shoulders. Her light was the color of sunset, beautiful and ending. Thank you, she said, for letting me pretend, for just a few days, that I could be normal. You were never supposed to be normal. Normal is vastly overrated. Yura smiled. Then, before Elian could react, she pressed her forehead against his, and everything changed. Her light, all of it, rushed into him like a flood. Not burning, not painful, just overwhelming. Every photon, every particle of luminescence, flowing from her body into his. Elian gasped. He could see the world the way she saw it, feel emotions as colors, sense the weight of every wound in every person within 100 meters. It was beautiful and terrible, and far too much for a human nervous system to handle. What are you doing? He choked out. Giving you my light, Yura said. Her voice was fading. Her skin was losing its translucence. Temporarily, maybe an hour. They cannot track what they cannot detect. You must leave the city. Hide. Let them take me. Then the light will return to me and you will be safe. No, Yura, no. But she was already stepping back, already walking toward the roof access, already fading from visible luminescence into something that looked almost human. Elian tried to follow, but his body was adjusting to the foreign light. Every step felt like learning to walk again. He stumbled, caught himself, looked up. Yura was at the door. She turned back once. I am glad it was you, she said. I am glad my light found you. Then she disappeared into the building. Elian stood on the roof, glowing for the first time in his life, watching the sky grow lighter and feeling more afraid than he had ever felt before, because he finally understood. The light did not follow pain to cause more suffering. It followed pain to say, you are not alone. I see you. Your wound matters. And Ira had been doing that her entire life. Seeing people, acknowledging their hurts, being punished for caring too much. He had to stop her. He had to get to the plaza before she turned herself in. He had to do something, anything, other than stand on this roof glowing like a beacon while the person who had saved him walked straight into a trap. But his legs would not move. The light was too much, too bright, too powerful. Elian Ward collapsed to his knees and did something he had not done since the accident. He wept, and with every tear, he glowed brighter. Below, in the archive's main entrance, Yura walked toward 3 Luminar clan officials with her head high and her light completely extinguished. One of them scanned her with handheld equipment, frowned, scanned again. "Signature is wrong," the official said. "Too faint. Could be a decoy." "I am Ira of Clan Soliel," she said clearly. "Hereditary heir. I am here to surrender." "Prove it. Demonstrate your symbiotic light." Ira tried, concentrated, reached for the familiar glow. Nothing came, because every photon of her light was currently blazing on a rooftop 300 meters away, lighting up a human librarian who had never asked to carry such a burden. "She is a fake," the official declared. "Find the real heir. Search the building." As they moved past her, Ura realized her terrible mistake. She had tried to save Elian by giving him her light, but she had only made him a target. And now she had no way to protect him at all. Elian did not remember climbing down from the roof. He only remembered Kale finding him in the archive's back corridor, glowing like a miniature star. "What in the name of—" Kale started, then stopped, looked closer. "Elian?" "I need you to not ask questions," Elian said, his voice strange even to his own ears. "And I need you to trust me for approximately the next hour." To his credit, Kale only hesitated for 3 seconds. "What do you need?" "The holographic mapping system. Can you make it project outside the building?" "Technically, yes, but that would violate about 6 municipal codes." "Do it. Project random light patterns throughout the plaza, bright enough to confuse bioscanners. And do it now." Kale ran. Elian moved through the archive like he was learning his own body for the first time. The light wanted to spread, wanted to touch everything, wanted to seek out wounds and acknowledge them. He passed a janitor with chronic pain in her hip. The light flared toward her and she gasped as the ache suddenly, inexplicably lessened. "What did you just do?" she whispered. "I have no idea," Elian admitted. "But I need your help. There are people searching this building. Can you slow them down?" Politely. "Just a few minutes." The janitor looked at him, looked at the glow, then smiled. "I have always wanted to have a very long conversation about proper electrical maintenance protocols. Very long, very detailed." She headed toward the extraction team, mop in hand, already launching into a technical monologue that made several officials visibly wince. Elian found Ura in the basement. She was sitting on the floor, her skin pale and almost colorless. Without her light, she looked fragile, breakable. "You have to take it back," Elian said. "The light. I do not know how to control it." "It will return on its own in 30 minutes, Ura said weakly. "Symbiotic light cannot survive in non-luminar biology indefinitely." "But Elian, you have to run. They are searching for you now. They scanned me and found nothing, so they know someone else is carrying the signature." "I am not running." "You must." "No." Elian sat beside her. "I understand now. I understand what you have been carrying your whole life. Every person I pass, I can feel them. Their joy, their fear, their small hidden griefs. It is like being forced to care about everything all at once. How do you survive this?" "You learn to build walls, or you break." Ira looked at him. "I mostly broke." "You did not break, you bent. There is a difference." Above them they heard footsteps, voices. The search was getting closer. "We need a new plan," Elian said. "Right now." "There is no plan. We failed." "No, we tried one approach and it did not work. That is not the same as failing. That is just iterating." He pulled out his datapad, ignoring how his fingers left glowing prints on the screen. "Your mother disappeared on Nareen 5 for 2 years, successfully. She did it by integrating with the bioluminescent ecosystems, by becoming part of the forest's natural light pattern. I am not my mother." "No, you are better, because you do not have to hide anymore. You just have to show them what symbiotic light really does." Ura shook her head. "They will never understand. Then we make them understand. We go to the forest. We demonstrate resonance. We show them that symbiotic light is not a weapon. It is a bridge. Alien stood, pulling her up with him. And we do it publicly, where the entire city can see. That is suicide. That is testimony. Footsteps on the stairs. They were out of time. Alien did something he would never have had the courage to do in his old life. He pulled Yura close, wrapped his arms around her, and let the borrowed light flood outward in every direction. It filled the basement, shot up through floor grates, spilled into corridors. And when it touched the Luminar officials searching the building, they stopped moving, because the light showed them something they had not expected. Memories, shared pain. Every moment Yura had been told she was wrong for feeling. Every time she had been punished for caring. Every wound she had been forced to carry alone. The light showed them not just who she was, it showed them why. One official, a stern woman named Kalis, staggered against a wall. How is this possible? Symbiotic light should not have narrative capacity. Maybe, Elian said, his voice amplified by the glow. That is because you never let it speak before. You only ever told it what to say. This is illegal use of biological weaponry, another official stammered. This is not weaponry. This is communication. There is a difference. The light began to fade. Elian felt it flowing back toward Yura, returning to its proper host. As it left him, he felt oddly cold, diminished, like losing a sense he had only just discovered. Yura's skin began to regain its luminescence, but this time, she did not try to suppress it. She let it grow, let it fill the room, let it speak in the only language it had ever truly known. I will come with you, Yura said to the officials, but on my terms. We will go to the bioluminescent forest. All of you, and I will demonstrate what my mother tried to prove 20 years ago, that symbiotic light does not dominate. It harmonizes. This is not a negotiation, Kaylee said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then arrest me, Yura challenged. Drag me onto your ship, but know that every person in this city just felt what I felt. And they will have questions, lots of questions, about why the clan Soleil treats its heirs like weapons instead of people. Kalis and Yura locked eyes for a long moment. Some unspoken understanding passed between them. Finally, Kalis nodded. You have 1 hour, the forest, public demonstration. Then we talk about what happens next. Agreed. As the officials retreated to coordinate, Elian pulled Ayura aside. That was incredibly risky. I learned from a very stubborn librarian that sometimes risk is the only real option. She smiled. Besides, I am tired of being afraid of my own light. They left the archive together, walking through the plaza as dawn fully broke over Nareen 5. News of the negotiation had spread somehow. People were gathering, curious, concerned, some afraid, some hopeful. Kale appeared beside them with a small pack. I brought supplies, water, emergency beacon, and also this. He handed Elian a small data crystal. I recorded the light broadcast, the one you sent through the building, in case you know. You need evidence later. Thank you, Elian said, genuinely moved. Are you kidding? This is the most interesting thing that has happened in this archive since we digitized the Don't Panic, Section 42 collection. They reached the forest edge. The extraction team was already there, along with what looked like half the city's population. News drones hovered. Recording equipment hummed. Ayura looked at Elian. Last chance to run. I am done running, and so are you. Then let us show them something beautiful. She took his hand. Her light began to pulse, and together they walked into the bioluminescent forest. The native plants sensed her immediately. Within seconds, the entire canopy began to glow in synchronized patterns. Moths descended in swarms, not aggressive, but curious. Small creatures emerged from hiding, adding their own light to the growing symphony. And Yura stood at the center of it all, glowing brighter than she had ever allowed herself to glow before. Not as a weapon, not as a tool, as herself. The forest sang with her, and for the first time in 9 years, Ura stopped running. She stood still, and she shined. For the first 90 seconds, it was perfect. Ura stood in the forest clearing, her light pulsing in gentle waves. The bioluminescent ecosystem responded like an orchestra tuning to a new conductor. Fungi bloomed in synchronized patterns. Insects created light sculptures in the air. Even the trees themselves seemed to lean closer, their bark shimmering with reflected glow. The crowd watching from the forest edge was silent, stunned. Then the extraction team activated their scanners. The equipment was designed to isolate and track luminar biosignatures even in complex environments. But nobody had anticipated what would happen when those scanners hit a symbiotic light user who was actively resonating with an entire ecosystem. The feedback was catastrophic. Every scanner exploded simultaneously. Officials stumbled back, equipment sparking. And in the chaos, something else activated. Something that had been hidden in the extraction team's secondary protocols. Suppression fields. They were designed for hostile encounters, for luminars who refused extraction and needed to be forcibly subdued. The fields created electromagnetic interference that destabilized bioluminescent organisms at the cellular level. They were illegal on most worlds, classified as torture devices by the Galactic Council, and they were now flooding the forest. Ura screamed, not from pain in the traditional sense, but from the sudden violent silencing of her light. It felt like having a limb amputated while awake, like losing a sense she had possessed since birth. The forest screamed with her. Every glowing organism began to flicker and die. Moths fell from the air. Fungi collapsed into ash. The trees themselves began to dim, their natural luminescence failing under the artificial interference. "Shut it off!" Elian yelled, running toward the official who held the field generator. But Kalis was already moving. She grabbed the device from her subordinate and hurled it to the ground, shattering it. The field collapsed. But the damage was done. The forest was dying. Not permanently, but the shock had been too much. The delicate balance of the bioluminescent ecosystem was collapsing, and at the center of it all, Ura lay curled on the ground, her light flickering desperately like a candle in wind. Elian reached her first. "Ura, stay with me." "The forest?" she whispered. "I can feel it dying. All of it. Every creature. Every plant. The resonance. It connected us. And now they are breaking because I am breaking. Then we fix it. We rebuild the resonance. I cannot. The suppression field, it severed something. I can glow, but I cannot connect. The bridge is gone." Elian looked around desperately. The crowd was in chaos. Officials were arguing. The forest was dimming by the second. Everything they had worked for, everything Ura had risked, was collapsing. And then he remembered something she had said days ago, in the basement. Symbiotic light does not dominate, it harmonizes. "Ura," he said, an idea forming. "What if you are not supposed to fix this alone? What if the point of symbiotic light is not to lead but to reflect?" I do not understand." "You spent your whole life being told to shine for others, to control the narrative, but what if the real power is letting others shine through you?" He stood up, addressing the crowd. "Everyone with bioluminescent biology, everyone who has ever glowed, I need you in the forest, now." The crowd hesitated. Then a young Valorian girl stepped forward. Her species had mild luminescence, nothing compared to luminars, but it was enough. She knelt beside Ura and let her own small glow touch the damaged forest floor. One by one, others followed. Dozens of beings from a dozen species, each adding their own light to the clearing. Human settlers who had undergone bio-augmentation, native Nareen species, even a few tourists who had thought they were just watching a spectacle. Ura looked at Elian with dawning understanding. "They are all connecting to me, using my light as a bridge to reach the forest." "Not your light," Elian corrected. "Our light, all of us, together." Ura closed her eyes and stopped trying to control anything. She just existed, just allowed herself to be the connection point between dozens of different light sources and the damaged ecosystem around them. And the forest began to heal. It was not fast, it was not perfect, but slowly, painfully, the bioluminescent organisms began to recover. Moths stirred, fungi pulsed back to life, trees regained their shimmer. One of the Luminar officials, a younger man named Torek, watched with his mouth open. That should not be possible. Symbiotic light cannot sustain multi-species resonance at that scale. Maybe, Kale said from somewhere in the crowd, that is because nobody ever tried before. But just as hope was returning, alarms sounded from the extraction ships in orbit. New figures appeared at the forest edge. These were not local officials. These were clan elders, the true power of the Solael lineage. Their leader, an ancient Luminar named Korath, walked into the clearing with the kind of authority that made even the trees seem to bow. His light was controlled, perfect, dead. Era, he said, his voice like stone. This demonstration changes nothing. You will return with us. You will fulfill your hereditary obligations. These theatrics do not alter the law. Ayura stood, still weak, but defiant. The law was built on a lie. My mother proved that symbiotic light could choose freedom. You erased her discovery, built a dynasty on suppressing what our light truly was. Your mother was a traitor who abandoned her duty. My mother was a person who refused to be a weapon. Korath's light flared with anger. You speak of things you do not understand. The Solael clan has maintained peace through 4 system conflicts. Our light has prevented wars, exposed corruption, protected billions. By violating thousands, Yura shot back, by forcing people like me to live as tools, by teaching us that our value exists only in our utility. That is the nature of power, sacrifice for the greater good. No. Yura's light steadied, grew stronger. That is the nature of exploitation. The greater good does not require individual suffering, it requires collective choice, and I choose not to be your weapon anymore. You think you have a choice? I know I do, because my mother made that choice, and she lived free for 2 years, and she died saving someone else's child during a forest collapse. She died being herself. Not a symbol, not a tool, a person. Korath's expression cracked just slightly. Lyra is dead? You did not even look for her, Yura said. You just told everyone she died and raised me in her place. You never wanted her back. You just wanted the illusion of continuity. Silence filled the clearing. Even the recovering forest seemed to hold its breath. Then Korath did something unexpected. His perfect, controlled light flickered. Just once, but it was enough. Your mother, he said quietly, was my daughter, and I let her go because I believed the clan was more important than one person's happiness. I was wrong, and I have spent 20 years trying to convince myself otherwise. Yura stared at him. You are my grandfather. I was. Before I chose duty over family. Before I decided that symbols mattered more than people. He looked at her, really looked for the first time. You have her fire, her impossible stubbornness, her refusal to pretend that rules matter more than kindness. Then let me go, Yura said. Let me prove what she was trying to prove, that symbiotic light can exist without exploitation. If I let you go, the clan structure collapses. Other heirs will demand the same freedom. The system falls apart. Good, Yura said simply. Let it fall. Build something better. Korath stood in that clearing, surrounded by dozens of beings who had just demonstrated that light did not need hierarchy to function. That connection did not require control. He looked old suddenly, tired. I cannot give you official freedom, he said finally. The clan laws are too rigid, but I can delay the extraction indefinitely. Bureaucratic complications, missing paperwork, you understand. It was not a full pardon, but it was a door left unlocked. "Why would you do this?" Ira asked. "Because my daughter asked me to 20 years ago, and I said no, and she died alone because of it." His light pulsed once, sad and final. "I will not make the same mistake twice." As Korath and the other elders retreated, Ira collapsed against Elian. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring about what they had witnessed. But Elian and Ira stayed in the clearing as the forest recovered around them, as dawn turned to full morning, as everything changed and somehow stayed exactly the same. "We did it," Ira whispered. "You did it," Elian corrected. "No, we did it. Together. Your stubbornness plus my light equals one very confused Luminar clan." They sat there, two people who had learned that the opposite of hiding was not necessarily standing out. Sometimes it was just standing still and letting yourself be seen. "What happens now?" Elian asked. Ira looked at the healing forest, then at him, then smiled. "Now," she said, "we write a different ending." 3 months later, the central archive looked different. Not in its structure. The shelves still stood 3 stories high. The books still smelled of old paper and older ink. The emergency lighting still cast everything in amber. But now, scattered throughout the building, there were sections that glowed, soft, organic, intentional. Ira had refused the official pardon that eventually came from the Galactic Council. She had also refused the ceremonial restoration to clan status, the offers of prestigious positions, the requests for speeches and testimony. Instead, she had filed for permanent residency on Nareen 5 and requested a work visa for a very specific position: Assistant Archivist, Central Archive. Starting salary, minimal. Benefits, none. Hours, whatever the collection required. Elian had tried to talk her out of it. "You could do anything," he had said. "Go anywhere. You are free now." "I am exactly where I choose to be," she had replied, learning to guard stories, and maybe, someday, writing my own. The Galactic Council had been less understanding. They sent 3 separate delegates trying to convince her that she was wasting her potential, that symbiotic light was too rare, too valuable, too important to spend on something as mundane as library work. Ira had listened politely to each delegate. Then she had taken them on a tour of the archive, showing them the way her light helped restore damaged manuscripts, how it could date paper by emotional resonance, how it created an environment where people felt safe enough to ask for the books they actually needed instead of the ones they thought they should want. The 3rd delegate, a pragmatic Valorian administrator, had finally understood. "You are not wasting your potential," she had said. "You are redefining it." "I am," Ira had agreed, "and it is wonderful." Now, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Elian found her in the history section, carefully cataloging a new acquisition. Her light pulsed gently as she worked, creating patterns that seemed to help the old books remember they still mattered. "I found something," Elian said, holding up a data crystal. "Another lost file about my mother. Better, a message." He loaded the crystal into the archive's viewing system. A hologram flickered to life. It was Lyrae, younger than her photograph, heavily pregnant, recording in what looked like a forest clearing. "To whoever finds this," the hologram said, "my name is Lyrae. I am about to give birth to a daughter I will never be allowed to raise. The clan will take her, train her, tell her I died nobly, but I want her to know the truth." Ira's hand found Elian's. Her light intensified. "The truth is that I ran away because I fell in love. Not just with a human, with the idea that love could matter more than duty, that choosing one person could be more powerful than serving thousands. The clan called this selfish, weak, a betrayal of everything our light was meant to be." Lyrae smiled, touching her stomach, "But I think they were wrong. I think the real power of symbiotic light is not how we can be used by others. It is who we choose to shine for, and I choose to shine for her. For my daughter, for the person she will become when nobody is telling her what she should be." The hologram flickered. "If you are watching this, my child, It means you survived them. It means you found your own way. And I desperately hope, that somewhere in your journey, you found someone who asked you why your light follows them. Someone who cared enough to understand instead of control. Lyra looked directly at the camera as if she could see across 27 years. Be stubborn, little light. Be impossible. Feel everything. And never ever let them convince you that caring too much is a flaw. It is our greatest gift. The recording ended. Yura was crying, but her tears glowed with something that looked like joy. She knew, Yura whispered. She knew exactly what would happen, and she still chose it. She chose you, Elian said, just like you chose yourself. They stood in the archive, holding hands, surrounded by books and light and the quiet certainty that some endings were really beginnings. The next morning, the archive received an unusual visitor. Korath, the clan elder, walked in without ceremony or guards. He looked smaller somehow, more human, despite being very much not. I am here to donate materials to your collection, he said, setting down a data case. The complete history of the Soliel clan, including the parts we have suppressed for 3 generations. Why? Yura asked. Because you were right. The system needs to fall so something better can grow, and history hidden is history that repeats. He paused. Also because a very stubborn archivist filed a formal request under the Galactic Preservation Act, and I am legally required to comply. Elian tried not to smile. I may have submitted some paperwork. You submitted 73 different requests through 14 legal channels. You are remarkably persistent for someone who insists he is not important. I am a librarian, Elian said. Persistent is literally in the job description. Korath looked between them. At Yura's light, at Elian's steady presence, at the way they existed in each other's orbit like binary stars. My granddaughter is fortunate, he said quietly, to have found someone who sees her as a person before seeing her as a light. I am the fortunate one, Elian replied. She taught me that being seen is not the same as being exposed, that vulnerability and weakness are not synonyms, that sometimes the bravest thing is admitting you need help. After Korath left, Kale appeared with news. The archive had received requests from 3 other systems, Luminars who had heard Yura's story, who wanted to know if it was possible to work in places that valued them as people rather than assets. We cannot hire everyone, Elian said. No, Yura agreed, but we can teach them what we learned, that light does not need permission to exist, that tools can choose to become people, that running away and standing still sometimes require the same amount of courage. Over the following months, the archive became something unprecedented, a haven for those whose abilities made them valuable and therefore vulnerable, a place where being extraordinary was less important than being yourself. It was not perfect. There were still laws, still complications, still moments when the galaxy's machinery ground against individual freedom and everyone had to decide how much they were willing to bend before breaking. But there was also something new, something that had not existed before. Hope. One evening, exactly 6 months after the forest incident, Elian and Yura stood on the archive roof. Their ritual, their place. I received another message from the council, Yura said. They want me to establish a formal training program, teach other symbiotic light users how to exist outside of clan control. Are you going to do it? I think so, but on my terms, here, in the archive, where people come to us because they want to, not because they are forced. She looked at him. Would that be all right? It would mean more people, more chaos, more complications. I am a librarian. Chaos is just another word for a collection that needs better cataloging. Yura laughed, that sound that still surprised her every time it happened. Below them, the bioluminescent forest glowed. Above them, the stars did the same. And between earth and sky, Two people who had learned that the opposite of lost was not found. It was choosing to stop searching for something you already were. "Thank you," Yura said softly. "For what?" "For asking why my light followed you. For caring about the answer. For giving me a reason to stop running." Elian took her hand. "Thank you for showing me that some questions are more important than answers. That being seen does not require being loud. That humanity is not about being perfect. It is about being present." They stood together as the night deepened and the city below hummed with life, and somewhere in the archive, a new book was being written. Not about heroes or weapons or great destinies, but about a woman who glowed and a man who listened. About wounds that connected instead of dividing. About light that asked for permission instead of demanding attention. And about the simple, stubborn, revolutionary act of choosing to be kind when the entire galaxy tells you that power matters more. Years later, when scholars studied the Luminar reforms, they would point to that night in the forest as the turning point, the moment when symbiotic light was reclassified from military asset to protected biological phenomenon. But the truth was quieter. The truth was a man asking a woman why her light followed him, and being brave enough to wait for an answer. The truth was humanity doing what it did best, not conquering, not dominating, but seeing someone in pain and asking one simple question: how can I help? And then, impossibly, stubbornly, beautifully, actually helping. Because that is what humans do. They care when caring costs everything. They choose connection over safety. They ask questions instead of making assumptions. And sometimes, in the space between question and answer, they save entire galaxies without ever meaning to. Elian Ward and Aera of Clan Soleil lived quietly after that. They ran an archive, cataloged books, taught people that light could exist without exploitation. But some nights, when the forest glowed and the stars shone and everything was perfectly, impossibly still, they would stand on the roof and remember. Remember that love is not loud. Remember that power is not always visible. Remember that sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is refuse to be anything other than yourself. And remember that they had been lucky. Lucky to find each other. Lucky to choose kindness. Lucky to learn that humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons, or its technology, or its stubborn refusal to quit. It was its ability to look at someone broken and see not a problem to solve, but a person to understand. And that understanding, that simple human act of paying attention, of caring, of asking why, that changed everything. In the quiet after everything, one truth remained. Sometimes the smallest human gesture, a question, a pause, a willingness to listen, ends up rewriting a life, a clan, and the shape of an entire future. We spend so much time trying to shine in the right way that we forget the power of simply being seen exactly as we are. Maybe that's the real lesson hidden inside all this light. Humanity wins not because it is strong, but because it notices, and noticing changes everything. And now the uncomfortable but important part. What wounds in your life would glow if someone finally acknowledged them? What would happen if, just once, you stopped running from yourself and let someone stand still beside you? And in a universe obsessed with usefulness, where do you choose to shine on your own terms? If you're still here after this miniature emotional demolition, congratulations, you are now part of the 0.01% who enjoy sci-fi, philosophy, and mild existential crises with a side of glowing space drama. Write the word luminance in the comments so I know you reached the end without spontaneously combusting like a broken scanner. Tell me your city, because even across galaxies, humans instinctively look for each other. Subscribe if you want more stories where humans win not by punching harder, but by caring louder. Like, hype, share. Throw this video at a friend who needs emotional damage with cosmic ambience. And don't forget to watch the next story appearing on the final screen. Because if humanity can accidentally reform an alien dynasty with one librarian, imagine what we'll do in the next episode.